The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the city. The streets buzzed with activity as people hurried along their way, lost in their own worlds. Among the crowd, Nia walked with a calm that belied the storm of thoughts swirling in her mind. She had always found comfort in the hustle of the city, the movement of people that kept her from thinking too much. As an artist, her life was often filled with moments of solitude, but today she was here for an art exhibit, hoping to find some inspiration. The gallery was quiet. The only sounds were the soft murmur of voices and the faint clink of glasses. Nia stepped inside, feeling the cool air brush against her skin. The walls were lined with paintings, some abstract, others more classical. She moved slowly, her eyes scanning the artwork, feeling the emotions they evoked. Colors, the shapes, the stories within the frames, each piece whispered something to her, but none of them made her feel truly connected. She was searching for something deeper, something that would stir her soul. As she turned a corner, her gaze landed on a painting at the end of the hall. It was a beautiful piece, vibrant and full of life. The strokes of the brush seemed to pulse with energy, and for a moment she forgot about everything else. She stepped closer, captivated by the work, her fingers almost itching to touch the canvas. She didn't notice the man standing beside her until he spoke. "It's incredible, isn't it?" His voice was smooth, but there was an edge of something, as if he were trying to hide something behind the words. Nia turned to face him, surprised to find a man standing so close. He was tall, well-dressed, with sharp features and dark eyes that seemed to see right through her. His presence was commanding, yet somehow distant. He had the look of someone used to being in control, but there was a sadness behind his gaze, something that piqued her curiosity. "It is," Nia replied, her voice soft as she studied the painting again. "The colors are so alive. It feels like the artist poured a piece of their soul into it." He nodded, his eyes flicking from the painting to her face. "That's what I love about art. It's not just about what you see. It's about what you feel." Nia's heart skipped a beat. There was something in the way he said it, something familiar yet unsettling. She glanced at him again, trying to place where she had seen him before. "I agree," she said, her voice a little quieter now. "It's about the emotion behind the work, not just the strokes." They stood there for a few moments, both lost in the painting but neither really seeing it anymore. There was an undeniable chemistry in the air between them, a tension that neither of them could ignore. For Nia, it was like a spark had ignited inside her, a sudden heat that spread through her chest. She had felt this before, in the presence of someone who stirred her soul, but it had always been fleeting. She was used to being alone, to finding inspiration in the quiet of her own thoughts. But there was something about this man that made her want to stay, to explore the connection that was forming. "I'm Aryan," he said after a moment, his voice bringing her back to reality. "I didn't mean to intrude, I just get lost in the art sometimes." "Nia," she said quickly, her voice a little breathless. I wasn't expecting anyone to join me." He smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling slightly. "It's rare to find someone who truly appreciates art for what it is," he said, his voice soft but with a certain finality to it. "Most people just look at it because it's trendy. You seem different." Nia's heart fluttered. She couldn't tell if it was his words or his presence that affected her so deeply. I try to see beyond the surface," she said, looking away to hide the warmth creeping up her neck. For a moment, there was an awkward silence. They both knew something had shifted, but neither of them wanted to acknowledge it. Aryan glanced around the gallery, his eyes landing on a few other pieces of art, but Nia could feel the pull between them, an invisible thread drawing her in. "You're an artist too, I assume?" Aryan asked, his gaze returning to her. Nia hesitated before nodding. "Yes, I am. I paint. It's how I express myself." "I thought so," he said, his eyes lighting up with interest. "You have that. I don't know, that energy about you. You don't just look at the art, you feel it." Nia couldn't help but smile, a small but genuine smile that reached her eyes. "Thank you," she said, her voice softer now, more open. Aryan studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then he glanced at his watch and sighed. I should be going. I have a meeting in a bit. Oh, Nia replied, her heart sinking a little. She hadn't realized how much she had wanted him to stay until now. I understand. Maybe I'll see you again, he asked, as though it were a casual question, but Nia could hear the underlying hope in his voice. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. I'd like that, she said quietly. With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Nia standing there, feeling a strange emptiness settle inside her. She watched him go, the ache in her chest growing. There was something about him, something she couldn't explain, that made her feel alive in a way she hadn't in a long time. But it was clear that he wasn't someone who would easily open up, and Nia wasn't sure if she was ready to try again with someone who seemed so distant. As the evening wore on, Nia tried to push the memory of Aryan out of her mind, but it lingered. The way his eyes had met hers, the way he spoke about art as if he understood it the way she did, there was something undeniable between them. But she couldn't let herself get caught up in it. She had her own life, her own struggles. She wasn't ready to let anyone in, especially not someone who seemed as guarded as Aryan. Little did she know, Aryan couldn't shake the thought of Nia either. As he left the gallery, his mind raced with questions. Who was she? Why did he feel so drawn to her? He had met many women in his life, but none had affected him the way Nia had. There was something about her that made him want to know more, to understand the quiet intensity that seemed to radiate from her. He told himself it was just a passing moment, that he had no time for distractions. But deep down, he knew he wasn't ready to let go of the connection they had shared. As the days passed, both Nia and Aryan went about their lives, but their thoughts kept drifting back to each other. It wasn't the last time they would meet, of that they were both sure. Something about fate, or perhaps the universe, had set them on a path that was intertwined. Neither of them knew where it would lead, but one thing was certain: their story had only just begun. The morning was quiet, and the city hadn't fully woken up yet. Nia sat in her favorite cafe near the corner of 5th and Main, her sketchbook open in front of her, a half-empty cup of coffee beside her. She liked to come here early when the place was still calm, and she could think without distraction. Her pencil moved slowly across the page, drawing lines that barely made sense to anyone but her. Art had always been her language, the way she spoke when words failed her. She glanced up as the bell above the door rang. A few people walked in, chatting quietly, but one figure stood out. Tall, confident, and dressed in a sharp black coat, Aryan. Her heart skipped a beat. He didn't see her right away, but the sight of him made something stir inside her. She hadn't expected to see him again, at least not so soon. She watched as he ordered a drink, then turned, scanning the cafe. Their eyes met. He blinked, surprised, and then smiled, a small, genuine smile that reached his eyes. Without a word, he walked over and gestured toward the empty seat across from her. Nia nodded, pretending to be more focused on her sketch than she really was. I didn't expect to see you here, Aryan said, setting his coffee down. Neither did I, Nia replied, her tone light but cautious. This is my usual place. Mine too, he said. Strange, we never ran into each other before. Nia shrugged. Maybe we just weren't meant to meet until now. Aryan leaned back, watching her. Maybe. They sat in silence for a moment. Aside, the city slowly came alive, cars passing by, people hurrying along the sidewalk. Inside the cafe, the world felt smaller, quieter, like their own little bubble. You always draw here? Aryan asked, nodding toward her sketchbook. Sometimes, Nia said, closing it gently. It helps me think. Clears my head. Can I see? He asked, and she hesitated for a moment before turning the book toward him. Aryan flipped through the pages slowly. Her sketches were full of emotion, portraits, faces with haunting expressions, moments of raw beauty captured in charcoal and ink. He paused at a drawing of a woman sitting alone under a tree, her face turned toward the sky. She looks like she's waiting for something, he said softly. Maybe she is, Nia replied. Or maybe she's just hoping something will find her. Aryan looked up at her, his eyes thoughtful. You're very talented. Thanks, she said, her cheeks warming slightly. Compliments always made her uncomfortable, especially when they came from someone like him. He set the book down. I envy that. The ability to express so much without saying a word. Nia smiled faintly. We all have our ways. They talked for a while longer about small things, art, books, the city. It wasn't deep, not yet, but there was something comforting in the way their conversation flowed. Neither of them was trying too hard. Felt natural. Easy. Eventually, Aryan stood. I should go, he said. But it was good seeing you again. You too, Nia said, and watched him walk out the door just like before. Over the next few weeks, they kept running into each other. At a bookshop downtown, at a small gallery opening, even once in the park where Nia liked to walk and clear her mind. Each time felt like a coincidence, but too many coincidences started to feel like fate. They never planned the meetings, but somehow their paths kept crossing. Each time they spoke, the distance between them grew smaller. They shared bits of themselves in quiet moments, Aryan talking about his work and the pressure of always being in control, Nia speaking of her struggles to stay true to her passion in a world that often didn't understand her. But neither of them dared to go too deep. There was always a wall, invisible but strong, between them. Nia could see it in Aryan's eyes when he mentioned relationships. His gaze would grow distant, like he was remembering something painful. She understood that look too well. It was the look of someone who had loved and lost, and now carried the weight of that memory like a scar. For Nia, trust didn't come easily. She had been hurt before badly. Giving someone the power to break her again wasn't something she was ready for. Aryan made her feel things she hadn't felt in a long time, but that also scared her. The thought of falling, of being vulnerable, it felt like standing at the edge of a cliff. One afternoon, they met at the park again, both surprised to find the other there. The air was cool, and the trees were just beginning to turn orange and red. They walked slowly along the path, side by side, their steps in sync. I come here when I need to think, Nia said. I come here when I want to forget, Aryan replied. She looked at him. Forget what? He hesitated, then shook his head. Old memories. Things I can't change. They stopped at a bench and he sat down. Nia joined him, their shoulders almost touching. The silence between them was heavy, but not uncomfortable. You don't have to tell me, she said softly. But I'm here if you ever want to. Aryan looked at her, and for a moment Nia thought he might open up. But then he smiled, that same polite smile he always wore when he was hiding something, and looked away. Some things are better left in the past, he said. Nia nodded, even though a part of her didn't agree. She believed in facing pain, in turning it into something beautiful through her art. But she couldn't force him to be ready. They sat in silence for a while, watching a group of children play with a dog nearby. The laughter and joy seemed like it belonged to another world, far from the one they both lived in. I'm not very good at this, Aryan said suddenly. At what? This, he gestured vaguely. Getting close to people. Letting them in. Nia looked down at her hands. Me neither. They both laughed softly, a quiet, sad kind of laughter. I like talking to you, Aryan said after a pause. I like talking to you too. They turned to look at each other, and for a moment the world seemed to pause. There was something in the air, unspoken, fragile, and full of possibility. Aryan reached out slowly, his fingers brushing against hers. Nia didn't pull away. Their hands rested together, gently, like a promise not yet made but already felt. But then, almost as quickly, Aryan pulled his hand back. He stood. I should go. Nia stood too. Okay. He looked at her, as if wanting to say something more, but instead just nodded. Take care, Nia. You too. She watched him walk away again, the weight in her chest heavier than before. Every time they got closer, he stepped back. And yet, she couldn't let go of the feeling that he wanted this just as much as she did. Maybe even more. Back in her studio that night, Nia tried to paint, but nothing came. Her thoughts kept drifting to Aryan, to the way he spoke, the sadness in his smile, the way his fingers had trembled slightly when they touched hers. She didn't know what they were or where they were going, but she knew she wanted to find out. At the same time, Aryan sat alone in his apartment, staring at the city lights from his window. He thought about Nia, her kindness, her honesty, the way she made him feel like he could breathe again. He wanted to be near her, but something inside him held back. A voice that told him he didn't deserve something that good. That if he let her in, he'd only end up hurting her, or getting hurt himself. They were both standing at the edge of something real, something rare. But the fear of falling kept them frozen. Fate had brought them together again and again, but the question remained. Would they finally take the risk or let the chance slip away? Only time would tell. The rain had started just before evening. Soft at first, then heavier, falling like a curtain over the city. Nia stood by the window in her studio, watching raindrops race down the glass. She held a cup of tea in her hands, but it had gone cold. Her thoughts were too far away to care. She hadn't seen Aryan in 3 days. Their last meeting had ended on a strange note. Not cold, not warm, just distant. Something had shifted between them, but she couldn't name it. A knock on the studio door broke her thoughts. She turned, surprised. No one usually came without calling first. She opened the door slowly, and her breath caught. There, standing in the hallway, soaked and holding a small umbrella, was Rohan. Her ex. "Nia," he said, his voice uncertain but familiar. "Hi." She didn't move. She hadn't seen him in almost 2 years. He looked different now, tired, maybe older. His usual confident charm was gone, replaced with something softer. Regret, maybe. "What are you doing here?" she asked quietly. "I was in the area." I asked around. "I didn't know you worked here now." He paused. "Can I come in?" Nia stepped aside slowly, still trying to understand if this was a dream or some kind of test from the universe. Rohan stepped in, careful not to drip water everywhere. "I didn't come to cause trouble," he said. I thought about you. I wanted to see how you were doing." Nia crossed her arms. "You could have called." "I know," he said. "But I wasn't sure you'd pick up." She didn't reply. They stood in silence for a long moment before Rohan's eyes moved around the room. "You've changed," he said softly. "Your art, it feels more alive now." She looked at him. "Because I stopped painting for you." That made him flinch. "I deserved that." "Yes," she said. "You did." He looked down, then back at her. "Nia, I'm not here to ask for a second chance. I know I broke your heart. I was selfish. I didn't see what I had until I lost it." "Then why are you here?" she asked. "To say I'm sorry. Really sorry. And to tell you, I'm happy you're doing well. I see it in your eyes. You're not the same girl who waited for me to choose her." Nia didn't say anything. She didn't trust her voice. Her heart felt like it was caught between the past and the present. "I'll go," Rohan said gently. "But I just wanted to see you one last time. And if you found someone new, I hope he treats you better than I did." He gave her a sad smile, then turned and walked out. She stood frozen, staring at the door long after he was gone. That night, Aryan sat alone in his office. Clock read well past 10. Papers and contracts were scattered across the desk, his phone blinking with unread messages. He should have gone home hours ago, but work had swallowed him again. That was the story of his life: late nights, cold dinners, and silence. He picked up his phone and scrolled to Nia's name. He wanted to call her, to hear her voice, to escape the weight of the corporate world even for a moment. But something held him back. He hadn't told her about the meeting in Delhi next week. or the sudden changes happening in his company. Everything was pulling him away from her, and he hated it. Aryan leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes. His past still whispered in his ears, reminders of mistakes, regrets, of a time when he let love slip away because he thought work was more important. He didn't want to repeat that, not with Nia. But he didn't know how to balance both. The next day, they met at the gallery again. It was supposed to be a simple visit, just an art show Nia had invited him to. She was showcasing 2 new pieces. Aryan arrived late, breathless, and distracted. His phone buzzed in his hand. Another email. Another decision. Nia saw him from across the room. Her heart lifted for a moment, then sank again when she saw the way he looked, tired, distant. "You made it," she said, trying to smile. "I did," Aryan said, forcing a smile back. "I'm sorry I'm late. Work's been insane." Nia nodded. "You always say that." Aryan blinked. "What do you mean?" "Every time we're supposed to spend time together, work comes first." "I get it, Aryan. You're important. You have a business to run. But sometimes I wonder if there's room for anything else in your life." He looked at her, confused. "Where is this coming from?" "Nowhere," she said quickly. "Forget it." "No, tell me." "You're upset." "I'm not upset," she said, her voice rising. "I'm just tired. Tired of feeling like I'm waiting for your attention. Like I'm always second." Aryan frowned. "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" Nia stepped back. "And while we're being honest, my ex showed up yesterday." Aryan stiffened. "What?" "He just appeared. Said he was sorry. Said he was happy for me. And it made me realize something." "What?" Aryan asked, his voice cold now. "That maybe I'm not ready for this either. Maybe we're both just 2 people too broken to fix anything." Aryan's jaw tightened. "So that's it? The one visit from your ex and you're ready to walk away?" "No," Nia said, her voice trembling. I don't know if this is going anywhere." They stared at each other, both breathing hard, emotions high. "I thought we were building something," Aryan said quietly. "So did I," Nia whispered. "But it doesn't feel like that anymore." A silence fell between them, heavy, painful. Aryan looked away first. "I have a flight to Delhi next week. Big meeting. I'll be gone for a while," he said. "Of course," she replied. "Work calls." He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Without another word, he turned and walked away. This time, she didn't stop him. For the next few days, they didn't speak. Nia threw herself into her painting, trying to lose herself in colors and brushstrokes, but everything felt flat. She missed talking to him. Missed the quiet moments, the walks, the laughs they shared. But she also knew that something had cracked between them. And she didn't know how to fix it. Aryan, miles away in Delhi, sat in meetings, shook hands, signed contracts, but his mind kept drifting to her. To her voice. Her smile. The way she looked at him when she was trying not to cry. He hated that he had hurt her. He hated that he didn't know how to be different. One night, alone in his hotel room, he stared at a photo of them together. Nia had taken it on one of their walks. They were laughing, heads close, like nothing in the world could touch them. He closed his eyes and felt the weight of everything he hadn't said. Everything he should have done differently. Back in the city, Nia stood on the same bench where they had once shared a quiet moment. The air was cold and she pulled her jacket tighter. She missed him. Missed the way he looked at her like she mattered. But she was scared. Scared that letting him in fully would only end in heartbreak. She looked up at the night sky, clouds moving slowly, stars hidden. Somewhere out there, he was thinking of her too. She could feel it. But was that enough? Sometimes love wasn't just about feelings. Sometimes it was about timing. About courage. about choosing someone even when everything else pulls you away. And right now, neither of them was sure if they were brave enough to choose each other. The city lights sparkled beneath a velvet sky as Nia stood in the grand gallery, heart pounding in her chest. Tonight was the biggest night of her career. Her art, her soul on canvas, was now displayed among the country's finest. Critics, collectors, artists, all eyes were here. But hers kept drifting to the entrance, scanning every face, searching for one that had haunted her thoughts every day since their last goodbye. Aryan. He wasn't supposed to come. At least that's what she told herself. He was busy, probably still in Delhi, closing deals, shaking hands. She hadn't heard from him since the fight. She hadn't reached out either. Pride held them both in its iron grip. She adjusted her dress, the silky fabric clinging to her nervously. Her paintings were hanging in the central hall, pieces that held memories of him. She wondered if he would feel them too if he stood before them. That very moment, across the street, Aryan stepped out of a black car. He adjusted his cufflinks, the invitation card folded in his coat pocket. He almost didn't come. 4 days he battled with himself. He thought of Nia's eyes, her voice, her art. Something inside him had pushed him here, something stronger than logic. He entered the gallery, the warmth of the place touching him instantly. Paintings lined the walls, colors blending and speaking without words. And then in the center he saw them, her pieces. Bold, raw, beautiful. Just like her. And then he saw her. Nia was speaking with a small group, smiling politely, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. When she turned and saw him, her breath caught. For a moment, the room faded away. It was just him and her. Aryan walked toward her, each step uncertain. She met him halfway, the tension between them thick but electric. "You came," she said softly. "I had to," he replied. They stood in silence for a moment, eyes locked. "Congratulations," he said. "Your work is breathtaking." "Thank you," she said, then hesitated. "Would you like to see them?" "With me." He nodded. They walked side by side, slowly, stopping in front of each painting. She explained the emotions behind them, the colors, the inspiration. One painting in particular held his gaze. A swirl of blue and gold, with 2 figures reaching for each other but not quite touching. "That one," he said, voice low. "That's us, isn't it?" She looked at him. "Yes. I painted it the day after our fight." He looked down, guilt flashing in his eyes. "I'm sorry. For everything. For not being present. For making you feel like you didn't matter." Nia shook her head. "I was scared too, Aryan. I never gave you a real chance. I thought if I kept my distance, I wouldn't get hurt again. And I thought if I focused on work, I wouldn't fail again," he said. "But I failed anyway. I failed you." They stood in front of the painting, emotions swirling. "Why does it feel like we keep finding each other over and over again?" she asked. "Maybe because we're not finished yet," he replied. The music from the gallery faded into the background. Guests moved around them, but they remained still. The moment stretched between them. "I missed you," Nia said, her voice barely a whisper. "Every day," Aryan said. "There wasn't a single night I didn't think of you." She looked into his eyes, searching for truth. What she saw there made her heart ache and swell at the same time. He reached for her hand, hesitant. When their fingers touched, it was like something inside them clicked back into place. "Can we start again?" he asked. Nia didn't answer immediately. She looked at the painting again. The 2 figures. So close. "Only if we promise to stop running," she said. "No more running," he whispered. Later that evening, they stepped out onto the balcony of the gallery. The city buzzed below, alive and unaware of the fragile moment unfolding above it. "I was scared," Aryan said. "Not just of love. Of needing someone. Of letting someone in." "I know," she said. "Me too." I lost someone before you, he confessed. Years ago. I never told you. She left because I never made time. And I promised myself I wouldn't feel that pain again. Nia looked at him, her expression soft. And I lost myself once. In someone else. I gave everything and got nothing. Took years to become whole again. That's why I guarded my heart so tightly. Aryan squeezed her hand gently. But I don't want to be scared anymore. Not with you. Neither do I, she said. They stood there, wrapped in silence, but it wasn't the silence of distance. It was peace. A rare, fragile peace. A soft breeze moved through her hair, and Aryan tucked a loose strand behind her ear. I don't know what tomorrow holds, he said. Neither do I, she replied. But I know I want to face it with you. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. Their lips met, and the kiss was gentle, filled with all the things they hadn't said. When they parted, she smiled. This time it reached her eyes. So, she whispered, does this mean we're rewriting our story? He smiled back. From the beginning. The night stretched on, filled with soft music, quiet laughter, and shared glances. But something had changed. The wall between them had begun to crumble, and in its place was something real. Love, yes, but also trust. And hope. Two people once afraid, now daring to believe again. And somewhere inside the gallery, a painting stood quietly, two figures still not touching but just a little closer now. The days after the gallery meeting were quiet but not empty. Nia found herself thinking about Aryan more often than she wanted to admit. The way he looked at her, the honesty in his words, the way he had admitted his fear, it all echoed in her mind. The same time, Aryan sat alone in his high-rise apartment, looking at the city lights with a cup of untouched coffee in his hand. He was a man used to control, but his feelings for Nia made him feel vulnerable. They both knew it wouldn't be easy. Rebuilding something that had barely started but already cracked was like fixing a fragile glass. Till they agreed to try. Aryan was the first to reach out. A simple message. Coffee tomorrow? No expectations. Just conversation. Nia stared at her phone for a long time before replying. Only if it's at the art cafe. The next day, they sat across from each other, a small table between them but a world of emotion in their eyes. Conversation was slow at first. Whether work, the art show. But then Aryan leaned forward and said softly, I meant what I said. I don't want to lose you again. Nia lowered her gaze. You don't know everything about me. My past, it's messy. And I'm not sure I know how to trust someone completely. He nodded. Then let's start by trusting that we're both trying. That was the beginning. Small steps. Aryan started sending her messages every morning, simple, sweet notes that made her smile. She responded with pictures of her paintings, short voice notes about her day, even a few silly sketches of him with exaggerated features. They weren't grand gestures, but they were real. One night after a long day, Nia called Aryan. Her voice was soft and unsure. I had a rough day. I didn't know who else to talk to. Aryan's voice on the other end was warm. I'm glad you called. Talk to me. That conversation lasted hours. They talked about things they never shared with anyone else. Nia spoke of the betrayal she felt when her ex left her just when her career was starting to bloom. Aryan opened up about losing someone close to him during his college days, how that shaped his fear of attachment. They didn't fix everything in one night. But for the first time, they understood each other's wounds. Till some days were harder than others. Nia would pull away, afraid that getting too close would only lead to pain. Aryan, in turn, sometimes became distant when work stress overwhelmed him. But now, instead of hiding or running away, they talked. One evening, Aryan showed up at her studio with a small box in hand. Inside was a set of paintbrushes, high quality, the kind she always admired but never bought. For the days you doubt yourself, he said. A reminder that someone believes in you. Nia smiled and touched his hand gently. You're not like them. You're different. He squeezed her fingers. And you make me want to be better. Another time, Nia surprised Aryan at his office with homemade lunch. They sat on his office floor, laughing over spilled juice and sandwich crumbs. This is the best boardroom meeting I've ever had, Aryan joked. It wasn't all perfect. There were still moments when shadows from their past would creep in. Nia would sometimes question his motives, asking herself if she was just another project for him. Aryan would occasionally panic when she didn't reply to his messages for hours, fearing she was pulling away. But they learned. One night, as they walked under the soft glow of streetlights, Aryan said, I know we've both been broken before, but I think broken people understand each other in ways no one else can. Nia stopped and looked up at him. So what do we do with all our broken pieces? He smiled. We build something new. Together. From then on, their efforts became more intentional. Nia began painting a new collection inspired by their story, a series called Rebuild. Aryan attended every small showing, no matter how busy he was. He even bought one of her paintings and placed it in his living room. Nia started joining Aryan for charity events and business dinners. First, she felt out of place in his high-powered world, but Aryan always made sure she knew she belonged. He held her hand, introduced her proudly, and always kept her close. Their weekends were filled with cooking experiments, long drives, and cozy movie nights. They created routines, Friday night dinners, Sunday morning walks, midweek check-ins. One Sunday morning, while sipping coffee on her balcony, Nia looked at Aryan and said, We've come far, haven't we? He reached out and brushed a loose strand of hair from her face. And we still have forever to go. There was no dramatic moment of realization, no grand declaration. Just a slow, steady growth. They still had fears, still had moments of doubt. But now they had each other to lean on. In a world that moved too fast and expected perfection, Nia and Aryan found comfort in the idea that love could be slow, messy, and beautifully imperfect. They didn't have all the answers, but they were asking the right questions together. And sometimes that was more than enough. Got it. I'll now begin writing part 6 of your romantic drama, a final test, in third-person style using simple, basic English and making it emotionally engaging and interesting. It will be around 1,800 words long. Please hold on while I write it for you. Part 6, a final test. The city was quieter than usual that evening. The skies were painted in soft orange and pink as the sun slowly dipped below the tall buildings. Nia sat by the window of her studio, staring at the half-finished canvas in front of her. The colors on it were beautiful, but her heart was restless. She dipped her brush in blue paint, then paused. Something inside her wasn't ready to finish this painting. Cross town, Aryan sat in his office, the lights dim and his laptop glowing softly. He had just received an email, an offer from a big company in Singapore. It was everything he had worked for. More money, a bigger role, a chance to finally be recognized on a global scale. But as he looked at the words on the screen, his thoughts kept drifting to one person, Nia. They hadn't spoken much in the past few days. Not because of a fight, but because of the silence that comes when two people are afraid to say what they're truly feeling. Nia had received her own news too. Her application to exhibit her work in a famous European gallery had been accepted. It was a dream she had carried for years, tucked deep inside her like a secret she was scared to say out loud. And now that it was real, she didn't know how to feel. Joy? Fear? Excitement? Maybe all of them. But mostly confusion. Later that night, Aryan walked to Nia's building. He didn't text her first. He just stood outside, hoping she was still awake. When he looked up, he saw her light was on. The warm yellow glow gave him a little courage. Nia opened the door before he could knock. She looked surprised but didn't step back. She simply moved aside to let him in. He walked in slowly, like he was walking into a dream that might fade any second. They sat across from each other on the studio floor, surrounded by canvases, brushes, and silent feelings. For a while, no one said anything. Then Nia spoke, her voice soft. "You came. I didn't know if I should," Aryan said honestly. "I'm glad you did," she replied. He looked around the room. "You've been painting a lot." She nodded. "Trying to figure things out through colors." "And did it help?" he asked. "Sometimes," she said with a small smile. "Sometimes it just makes me more confused." He smiled faintly. "I got an offer. In Singapore." Nia's heart skipped a beat. She didn't say anything right away. She just nodded. "You should take it," she said after a pause. Her voice was steady, but her eyes gave her away. "And you got the gallery spot in Paris," he said. Nia looked down. "Yes." They were both quiet again. The room was filled with words they didn't know how to say. "Nia," Aryan began, his voice low, "I don't want to lose you." "You're not losing me," she whispered. "But maybe we both need to go find who we are. On our own." Aryan shook his head gently. "We already know who we are. You and me. We've come too far to stop now." She looked at him, her eyes shining with emotion. "But what if we chase our dreams and lose each other in the process?" He moved closer, reached for her hand. "Then we fight for both. Love and dreams. We don't have to choose." "But what if we can't have both?" she asked, her voice cracking. "Then we figure out a way," he said. "Together." It was a simple word, together, but it carried so much weight. It held the promise of support, of sacrifice, of love that didn't give up easily. Nia leaned against his shoulder. "I'm scared." "I am too," Aryan whispered. "But I'm more scared of walking away from you than anything else." They sat like that for a long time. No big speeches, no dramatic tears. Just two people trying to hold on to something fragile and beautiful. The next few days were hard. They talked more, asked difficult questions, made lists, argued and laughed. They spoke about long distance, about time zones, about flights and art shows and business meetings. And slowly the fear started to shrink. Aryan didn't want to give up his offer, but he also didn't want to leave Nia behind. So he proposed something bold. He would go to Singapore, but only for a few months until his project there was set up. After that, he could manage things remotely and be back in India often. Nia agreed to move to Paris for the art show, but not permanently. She would stay for 6 months, grow her network, and then come back. Or maybe even travel between cities, making art everywhere she went and sharing stories of her journey. They were building a bridge between their dreams and their love, not choosing one over the other, but trying to balance both. It wasn't perfect. It was scary and uncertain. But it was real. Before Aryan left, they went on a short trip together, to a quiet village by the sea. They walked on the beach, watched sunsets, cooked simple meals, and talked about everything. No distractions, no emails, no missed calls. Just them. One evening, as they sat watching the waves, Aryan looked at Nia and said, "I used to think love was a distraction. Something that took you away from your goals. But now I know /love is what makes the journey worth it." Nia smiled, her eyes full of unshed tears. "I used to think love always ended in heartbreak. But with you, I feel like I'm finally home." They held hands, their fingers interlocked like puzzle pieces that finally found a match. Back in the city, the goodbye at the airport was quiet. No promises of forever, no dramatic goodbye scene. Just a hug that lasted longer than usual and a whisper from Aryan, "Wait for me." Nia nodded, her voice caught in her throat. "Always." As Aryan walked through the gates, Nia watched until she couldn't see him anymore. She didn't cry. She felt something stronger than sadness, hope. Months passed. They texted, called, sent voice notes, and video chatted. There were times it was hard, missed calls, different time zones, days when one was busy and the other was lonely. But every time they began to drift, they found their way back. Aryan would send her pictures of the city from his office window. Nia would share photos of her art, half-finished and messy but full of emotion. They talked about the little things like what they ate for lunch and the big things like how they were growing, changing, becoming better. One day, Aryan flew in to surprise Nia at her second gallery opening in Mumbai. She didn't know he was coming. When she saw him standing there in the crowd, her heart skipped a beat. He walked up to her, a soft smile on his lips. "I told you I'd come back," he said. And she, laughing through her tears, whispered, "You kept your promise." That night, under fairy lights in a small courtyard, Aryan took out a small velvet box from his pocket. He didn't kneel. He just held it out to her, his hands shaking slightly. "I don't have a perfect plan, Nia. I only have this heart that beats a little faster every time I see you. Will you keep it safe?" Nia looked at him, eyes wide, then smiled and said the words he'd waited to hear. "Always." In that moment, all the distance, all the fear, all the tests, they faded. What remained was love. Quiet, steady, unshakable love. They hadn't chosen between dreams and each other. They had chosen both. Together. The morning sunlight spilled gently through the window, casting a warm golden glow on Nia's bare feet as she stood by her easel. Her paintbrush hovered in the air, the canvas half finished, but her mind was somewhere else entirely. A week had passed since Aryan left for London to explore the job offer he had once only dreamed of. And now she stood alone, unsure of what came next. Aryan had called every night. His voice was soft but tired, and their conversations were filled with unspoken questions. Would he come back? Would she wait? Neither wanted to put pressure on the other, but the silence between the words said everything. Nia set down her brush and walked to the small balcony. Below, the city hummed with life, but inside her there was a quiet ache. She had always believed in art, in dreams, in the freedom to fly. But now she knew that love wasn't a cage. It was a wind that could carry you higher, if you let it. The same moment, thousands of miles away, Aryan sat on a bench by the River Thames, looking out at the flowing water. His phone was in his hand, but he hadn't called her yet. He had just come from the office of the firm that had offered him everything: power, prestige, a new beginning. But none of it felt right. He remembered the way Nia looked when she laughed, how her eyes crinkled at the corners. He remembered the smell of turpentine and jasmine in her studio, the taste of her homemade chai, the warmth of her hand in his. Closed his eyes. The life he wanted wasn't in boardrooms and business meetings. It was back home where love had quietly taken root. That evening, Nia walked into her studio to find something she hadn't seen in days. A small package wrapped in brown paper, with her name written in Aryan's familiar handwriting. Her heart thudded. She opened it slowly, carefully, like it was something fragile. Inside was a sketchbook, filled with pages and pages of drawings he had made. Her face, her hands, her smile, even her messy bun. On the last page was a note: "This is where I belong. I'm coming home." Tears welled up in her eyes as she pressed the book to her chest. It was as if a weight had been lifted from her heart. For the first time in days, she smiled. When Aryan arrived back at the airport 2 days later, Nia was waiting. She didn't run into his arms. She didn't cry. She just looked at him, really looked at him. And he looked back at her. In that moment, no words were needed. They walked side by side to the car, hands brushing now and then, until Aryan gently took her hand and held it tight. They spent the evening in her studio, sipping tea and talking about everything and nothing. Aryan spoke of London, of the meetings, of how empty it all felt. Nia listened, her fingers playing with the edge of his sleeve. Then she spoke of her upcoming art show in Italy, how she had almost cancelled it, how she had wondered if she should stay. Aryan shook his head. "You have to go. You have to live your dream." She looked at him. "And you?" He smiled. "I want to live mine. With you. Wherever that takes us." They decided to make it work. No ultimatums, no sacrifices that left wounds. Instead, they built a plan together. Aryan would move part of his work to a remote setup, splitting time between cities. Nia would attend her exhibition, with Aryan flying in for the big opening. They promised to never let silence grow between them again. Weeks passed, and their love deepened in new ways. Aryan started helping Nia with her show preparations, becoming a part of her world. And she, in turn, supported him through business calls, ideas, and everything in between. They didn't just love each other, they started building a life together. The night before Nia left for Italy, Aryan took her to the rooftop where they had once watched a meteor shower. The sky was clear and a soft breeze danced around them. There, under the stars, he pulled out a small velvet box. "This isn't a proposal," he said with a grin. "Not yet. But it's a promise. That no matter where we go, how far we fly, I'll always find my way back to you." Inside the box was a delicate silver ring, engraved with the words, "For all the tomorrows." Nia didn't cry. She simply leaned in and kissed him. Her flight left the next morning. Aryan was at the airport, his hand warm in hers until the last second. They kissed like it was the first time and the last, knowing that real love doesn't need constant presence. It needs constant heart. In Italy, Nia's art exhibition was a success. Critics praised her, collectors approached her, and her heart felt full. But every night, she called Aryan. And every morning, he messaged her a drawing or a poem or a memory they shared. When she returned, they picked up where they left off. No drama, no heartbreak, just a steady, growing love. A year later, in a quiet garden surrounded by friends and laughter, Aryan finally proposed. Nia said yes with a smile that lit up the world. Love had tested them. Fate had twisted their paths. But they had chosen each other again and again. And in the end, that choice made all the difference.